Hey, this is Austin Harman Mixes, and welcome to my Fundamentals of Audio series. First, let me tell you, if you missed the last episode, we discussed signal flow, and it's a very important precursor to this video, so if you missed that, there'll be a link in the description below. But today, we're going to be talking about the basics of an audio console. Now, for you audio experts out there, this video is not for you. This is for beginners who are trying to get into understanding how audio works and how to become a mix engineer. So for you experts, skip this one. There'll be more content for you in the future. For those of you who are trying to learn, thanks for clicking on this video. Please like and subscribe, and let's get into it. Okay, diving into what is a audio console. Well, luckily for me, I'm very honored and blessed to have in my studio both an analog console behind me and a digital console. Now, what are those? What's the difference? Well, back in the good old days, up until recently, maybe the past 20 years or so, all audio that was processed via what we call an analog console. Now, the console behind me looks like it has a lot of buttons and switches, and it does, but realistically, every single one of those buttons actually does something, and it was designed with intentionality. And the good part is that once you understand what we call the channel strip, which I'll get to in a minute, you can actually replicate that knowledge across all of those buttons and knobs, and all of a sudden that analog desk becomes a lot less overwhelming. Now, fascinatingly, in the digital world, as analog has moved to digital over the past 20 years, we have the entire processing power of that massive analog desk behind me. Over here in the corner, you can kind of see the edge of this digital desk. I'll pop an image up here on the screen so you can see the full-size version of that digital desk here. We have all that processing power available to us inside of a computer in a significantly less form factor. So the magic of digital is there, but there are some drawbacks to digital, there's some drawbacks to analog, and we're going to dive into all of that. First of all, let me just discuss what an audio console actually does. Okay, if you're a guitar player and you're out there trying to learn how to do audio, you're probably like, I don't know what any of this is. Austin, just tell me what I need to know. First of all, I want you to think about audio as the plumbing in your house. Okay, this is going to be a really gross analogy, but this is going to be helpful to understanding how the audio console works. Imagine your kitchen sink, okay? When you turn on the faucet, water comes out of the faucet. That water has to come from somewhere. It comes into the sink, and then it goes down the drain, okay? Now, imagine the water coming out of the faucet being the input to your system. Water coming out, that's the input to the system, okay? The sink is your audio console. You can dump soap in there. You can put dishes in there. All of the water that goes into the sink is affected by whatever you put in it, and then it subsequently goes out via the drain, okay? Now, the audio console works exactly the same way. You take signal into the audio console, you do some processing on it, and then you send audio out. Now, the amount of processing that you do and how you actually do said processing is really up to you as an audio engineer. And that makes the concept of being an audio engineer somewhat overwhelming to people, understandably so. But also you have to realize that the audio console, that position, being the audio engineer, somebody operating the audio console, you have complete end-to-end control over the way that the band, the music, the speaking sounds. That gives you an incredible amount of power, but also an incredible amount of responsibility. And if you do develop Spidey powers, let me know in the comments. It's a great reference to Spider-Man. Anyway, whatever. That being said, as an audio engineer, an audio console is like your instrument. You need to play the audio console like your instrument. You should fully understand how the audio console works and what it's capable of in order to be a successful audio engineer. But let's go over a couple of the basic aspects of an audio console. And as I'm discussing here, I'm going to be popping up some helpful imagery on the screen to help you follow along. Step number 1, audio coming into the audio console. First and foremost, the amount of audio coming in is defined by what we would call the preamp. Now the preamp is a circuit in the analog days and still in the digital days. It's an actual physical circuit that takes in small analog electrical signals and steps those up. Now in the analog world, and for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be comparing both analog and digital for your understanding. In the analog world, that step up is important because the circuitry that actually changes the sound requires a very specific amount of voltage and various electrical properties for it to work effectively. Now in the digital world, the same is true. We have to make sure we have a correct amount of input coming into the desk so that when the analog to digital conversion happens, you're capable of actually getting enough signal to translate that into the computer. Now, the preamp is referred to in multiple ways. Gain, preamp, head amp, all of those things are used interchangeably to describe that process. Most commonly, that is referred to as gain. Gain is not the same as volume, okay? Not the same. You're going to sound really smart at the dinner table. Gain is not the same as volume. The reason why it's different is that when you are turning up or down the gain, you are adjusting the preamp. You are drawing more from the source. Now, when you turn that gain up, yes, it could theoretically get louder, but you have to recognize that the action you're doing is drawing more from the source. This is very, very important as we discuss other elements of processing, because as we think about the signal flow of the audio console, gain, preamp, head amp, that's the first step along the processing journey. Everything that you do with that gain is going to affect everything behind the gain. Okay? A good example of this is I'm going to throw a channel strip up on the screen of an analog console so you can really understand the signal flow here. Now at the top, we have gain. You see the red knob, very tip top here. Moving on down, we have the equalization section. Everything we do by that gain affects the equalization circuit. The same is true in the digital domain. Okay, beyond that, we have inputs, or we have outputs, the output section. That output section still is affected by your gain, by your preamp. And then we subsequently get to our slider or fader. Please don't call it a slider. It is called a fader. You get to the fader, which actually turns the volume up or down on the console. Again, affected by the gain. So the gain is very important. Now I mentioned a lot of kind of steps along the way there that we're going to get into in later videos. But I think you can start to imagine how powerful an audio console actually is and how it's actually the center of the universe whenever it comes to your audio system. Now, this has been episode number 6, the introduction to an audio console. I hope that you are enjoying this series. If you have a question, I would love to answer you. Leave me a comment down below. I try to get back to every comment that's left for me as soon as I can. I love answering your comments. This has been Harman Mixes, Fundamentals of Audio. God bless you. I'll see you next time.